Before the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the sealed dormitory was cloaked in silence, thick and heavy like the calm before a storm. The air smelled faintly of sweat gun oil and worn leather, but nothing stirred except for the soft scrape of a mop gliding steadily across the cracked concrete floor. Her movements were methodical, practiced a dance, perfected through countless mornings just like this. She was just another shadow in the vast fortress of warriors, a ghost invisible too. The few who slept or prepared for the day ahead, her name meant nothing here, or at least that was what she believed. But as her rag wiped dust from the corners and her fingers brushed against cold metal lockers, she felt something different in the air weight that settled deep in her bones, something not seen but sensed like a whisper of trouble lurking just beyond the walls. The dorm was a place of legends whispered and forged in sweat and blood, where every scar, every dent in the lockers told a story. A story of courage, endurance, and sacrifice. But she was not part of that story. Not yet. She moved quietly past rows of weapons, locked and loaded helmets hung like sentinels guarding secrets. She knew the names carved into the wooden plaques on the walls, some heroes long gone, others just missing pieces of their souls, left scattered in distant deserts and jungles. The names flickered in her mind like ghosts, reminding her of the price paid for peace. Her heart beat steady, but under the surface, a flicker of anticipation hummed through her veins. The men who lived here were warriors of a caliber few could understand, trained to face death and bring it back in their hands. Yet today, something unsettled the calm routine. She paused by a rack where rifles lay polished and ready fingertips grazing cold barrels. She wondered what awaited beyond the walls, beyond the quiet. She was part of a world most never saw the one behind the medals, the parades, the stories told in bars. Just as she bent to pick up a fallen glove, the radio crackled, breaking the silence. A sharp staccato call sign cut through the dorm like a knife slicing the night. The sound was simple, yet charged with an electricity that rippled through. Every corner instantly heads turned, eyes snapped open, and bodies froze mid-movement. The name was spoken once, clear, precise, loaded with meaning and power, a name that stopped time itself. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, the mop slipped. From her hand, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Warriors who had faced death without flinching now paused as if touched by a ghost from the past. The call sign belonged to a man many believed lost a legend who vanished years ago under mysterious circumstances. His return was not just a message, but a harbinger of something massive looming on the horizon. She watched as the toughest operators exchanged glances filled with questions and unease. The tension thickened like a storm, about to break. The radio crackled again, but no one spoke. The single call sign had ignited a fire beneath the surface, a reminder that the calm was temporary and the fight was far from over. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the mop aside and stepped back against the wall, observing the room transform from quiet sanctuary to a hive of alert energy. The air buzzed with anticipation. Every muscle seemed ready to snap into action. She wondered if she would ever truly belong to this world, or if she was destined to remain on the fringes, the cleaner, the unseen observer. Outside, the first rays of sun pierced the darkness, painting long shadows across the dorm. But inside, the true battle was already beginning, unseen, but deeply felt. Her mind raced with questions: who had sent the call sign, what mission awaited, and what role would she play in the unfolding storm. For now, she was just cleaning. But soon, everything would change, and nothing would ever be the same again. The moment the call sign echoed through the dorm, the atmosphere shifted like the air before a thunderstorm. The warriors who moments ago had been casually preparing for the day suddenly moved with an urgency born of experience and instinct. There, Quiet whispers and low murmurs filled the space as they gathered gear and checked weapons with mechanical precision. She stood still watching as the men transformed from restless sleepers to lethal predators ready to hunt. Her role seemed insignificant, in comparison. Yet she sensed that something profound was unfolding around her. She moved toward the rows of lockers, her eyes flickering over each piece of equipment with practiced ease, but her mind was far from the routine task. The call sign haunted, her thoughts a sharp knife twisting in her gut. She wondered about the man behind it, the legend whose name struck fear and respect in equal measure, the one who had disappeared without a trace years ago, leaving behind only stories and unanswered questions. The dorm was no longer just a place of rest, but a staging ground for something bigger, something that pulsed with danger and promise. The weight of history pressed down on every surface, from the scarred walls to the worn floors, as if the ghosts of past missions whispered warnings in the shadows. Her fingers brushed against the cool metal of a rifle resting on a table. Its cold touch grounded her even as her mind raced with possibilities. Who would lead this mission? What dangers lurked? Beyond the horizon, what role could she play when the warriors she served were about to walk into the unknown? Sudden voice broke her reverie. The team leader barked orders, crisp and sharp like the crack of a whip. Commands were exchanged radios, tuned and plans reassembled in the blink of an eye. The dorm vibrated with focused energy, the tension building like a tightening spring ready to release. She stepped back carefully, not wanting to disturb the flow, but unable to tear her eyes away. From the swirling activity, each man moved with the certainty of someone who had stared death in the face, and returned changed harder, faster, more alive. Their faces were masks of concentration, but their eyes betrayed flickers of doubt and fear, buried deep beneath years of training. Outside the windows, the sky was fading from black to slate gray, signaling the approach of dawn. The cold air seeped in through cracked panes, carrying the faint scent of earth and gunpowder, a reminder that beyond these walls, the world waited unforgiving and wild. Her hands trembled as she reached for a cloth to wipe a sweat bead from her forehead. The simplicity of the motion contrasted sharply with the complexity of the moment, the calm before battle, a fragile bubble that could burst with one wrong step or one whispered secret. The radio crackled again. The call sign repeated this time, followed by coordinates and a brief coded message that sent a shiver down her spine. The mission was no longer speculation, but imminent reality. Every second was precious, every detail vital. She swallowed hard, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her chest. The question lingered silently in the charged air. Would she be left behind or thrown into the storm, alongside the warriors she had come to admire? The line between observer and participant blurred and shifted as the first rays of sunlight spilled over the horizon, casting long, sharp shadows across the dorm. She felt the pulse of impending action quicken in her veins. The quiet girl who cleaned the floors was now caught in the eye of a brewing tempest, a tempest fueled by secrets lost in the dust and whispers from the past. The dorm was alive with silent urgency, the calm broken but not defeated. The warriors moved with purpose, their steps measured but fierce, ready to answer the call that had shattered the dawn. And she stood on the edge, watching, waiting, wondering if this day would be the one that changed everything forever. The radio crackled again, a voice sharper and colder this time, cutting through the thick tension like a blade. The single call sign echoed once more, clear and commanding. The room held its breath as every head turned toward the source. The name belonged to a man cloaked in myth, a ghost who had vanished into darkness years ago, and now was whispered to have returned to the fold. The warriors exchanged glances heavy with meaning. Their hardened faces betrayed a flicker of something rare, disbeliefs. felt the weight of that disbelief settle over her like a dense fog. A name spoken in hushed reverence and fear that shattered the ordinary morning routine. The call sign was not just a word. It was a summons, a key unlocking memories and secrets. Best left buried, the mop in her hand slipped slightly as her pulse quickened. The dormant energy that had filled the room now surged into a roaring tide. The seals moved with silent urgency, preparations shifting from mechanical routine to battle. Ready. Precision. The air was thick with a tension that pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. Every glance she caught between operators told stories of missions, past losses that lingered like scars, and the burden of loyalty that bound. Them all, the man behind the call sign was a living legend, a symbol of hope and vengeance, but also a reminder of the darkness lurking in the shadows of war. She watched as the team leader barked sharp commands, their eyes narrowing with fierce resolve. Yet, beneath the surface lay a hesitation born of uncertainty. No one spoke aloud the questions burning in their minds: who had sent the call sign, why now, and what nightmare awaited on the horizon. Her gaze drifted to the radio as it sat on the table, alive with static and secrets. The faint glow of the screen pulsed like a heartbeat, sending chills down her spine. The coordinates given were distant and hostile, a place where few returned and fewer survived. The room seemed to contract and expand. With the rhythm of tension and anticipation, time warped into something fluid, moments stretching and collapsing as warriors prepared for what could be the most dangerous mission of their lives. She felt small and insignificant, yet strangely connected to the unfolding drama, as if fate had woven her into the fabric of this story, without her knowing. The mop was forgotten, now resting against the wall as she absorbed the electric energy around her. Outside, the dawn cracked open the sky painting, streaks of orange and red across the horizon. But inside the dorm, the light brought no comfort, only a sharp contrast to the darkness gathering in the hearts of men and women who would soon face a trial by fire. Her thoughts raced, trying to piece together the puzzle: the man who disappeared, the call sign that awakened ghosts, and the impending storm. She felt tightening like a noose around the warriors she silently served. The silence shattered again by the sharp bark of an order radio's clicking into place and boots hitting the floor. The seals moved as one, a wave of precision and power, ready to dive into chaos and emerge victorious, or not at all. She stepped back, blending into the shadows, watching the legends prepare to write another chapter. In a saga written in sweat and blood, the call sign had stopped them cold, but it had also ignited a flame that would burn through the night and beyond. The question lingered unspoken in the charged air. Would this mission be their salvation or their final descent into the unknown? She watched, waiting for the moment when silence would break and battle would roar to life. The call sign belonged to a man who was more than legend, more than myth. Whispered in the darkest corners of secret briefings and quiet mess halls, he was the shadow that disappeared into the fog of war years ago, leaving behind only stories of valor and mystery. His name carried the weight of ghosts, the kind that haunted even the toughest warriors and commanders alike. The return of this phantom was not just unexpected, it was an omen of something seismic about to shift in the fragile balance of power. She could feel the shift like an earthquake rumbling beneath the surface. The dorm no longer a place of rest, but a crucible forging warriors for the fire ahead. Every glance exchanged was laced with unspoken understanding and dread. This was no routine deployment, no simple patrol, but a reckoning long overdue. The man behind the call sign was said to have walked through hell and back, a master of survival and vengeance. His disappearance was a wound that never healed, a silence that screamed in the minds of those who had counted on him. The news of his return ignited a storm of emotions, from hope to fear to questions without answers. Around her, the seals moved with a new intensity, each man and woman sharpening their focus, as if drawing from an invisible well of strength and determination. The air was electric, charged with the knowledge that the coming mission would push them beyond limits, known and unknown. The past and present collided in this moment, binding them. To a fate shared and unbreakable, she felt the pulse of history beating through the walls, the echoes of battles fought and sacrifices made. The man they called back was not just a symbol, but a beacon leading them into a shadow war waged in silence and secrecy, far from the eyes of the world. The radio buzzed with updates and final briefings, the cryptic language of war exchanged with precision and urgency. Every word was a thread, weaving a complex tapestry of danger and strategy. The coordinates pointed to a place shrouded in peril, a hostile zone where enemies lurked in every shadow, and trust was a rare commodity. She watched the leader of the team step forward, a man hardened by years of conflict whose steely gaze betrayed a flicker of doubt beneath the mask of confidence. His voice was steady, but the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on his shoulders. This mission was unlike any other. It demanded everything and promised no guarantees. Her hands clenched at her sides as she felt the magnitude of what was coming. A part of her wished to run to safety, but another part recognized the call of duty, the pull of something greater than herself. The cleaning rag in her hand suddenly felt like a relic, a tool of the past, when what was needed now was courage and resolve. The dawn outside painted the sky with streaks of fire, but inside the dorm, the true battle was being born in the hearts and minds of those who would face it. The legend was back, and with him came the promise of redemption and the shadow of sacrifice. She took a deep breath, steadying herself as the team finalized their preparations. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness, every movement charged with significance. The dorm was no longer a sanctuary, but a gateway to war, a place where heroes would be tested and legends reforged. As the warriors gathered their gear and checked weapons, she felt a strange calm wash over her. The chaos and fear mingled with a fierce pride, the kind that only comes from knowing you are part of something far bigger than yourself. The man behind the call sign was the spark that lit the fuse, and soon everything would explode into motion, leaving no room for doubt or hesitation. The silence before the storm was thick and suffocating, but it was also a moment of clarity. A moment to steel the mind and harden the soul before stepping into the abyss. The Phantom had returned, and with him the war was no longer distant. It was here waiting for them, all. The dormitory erupted into controlled chaos as the warriors snapped to attention like a coiled spring released. The sharp bark of commands echoed off the walls, boots shuffled gear, clinked and whispered conversations filled the air. The weight of the call sign hung heavy in every movement, every glance exchanged, loaded with the gravity of what was coming. The atmosphere crackled with urgency and the unspoken understanding that the ordinary world they had known was slipping away fast. She watched from the sidelines as helmets were strapped on rifles, checked and packs slung over broad shoulders. Each man and woman moved with a practiced grace, born from countless hours of training and battle. But beneath the surface of precision lay a storm of emotions some tried desperately to hide. Others embraced the rush of adrenaline and the clarity that came with facing danger head-on. The leader paced briefly, barking out final instructions, his voice steady but edged with an intensity that raised the hairs on the back of her neck. His eyes scanned faces young and old, searching for any sign of hesitation or doubt. The mission ahead was brutal. Unforgiving and unforeseen risks lurked in every shadow. But retreat was not an option. Around her, the room hummed with energy. The warriors exchanged nods and clipped radio checks, their focus absolute. The air was thick with the scent of sweat leather and gun oil mingling with the cold breath of fear and determination, the knowledge that They were about to dive headfirst into the unknown, filled the space with a tangible electricity. She felt a strange mix of awe and helplessness watching these legends prepare to step into the storm. The mop she had wielded just hours before now seemed trivial, a symbol of the divide between her and the warriors she admired. Yet somehow she belonged here, a silent witness to a moment that would define lives and destinies. Outside the windows, the early morning light cast long shadows stretching. Across the dorm, the world beyond was awakening, oblivious to the silent war that was about to erupt from within these walls. The quiet before the storm was fading fast, replaced by the roar of impending conflict. A radio buzzed sharply, and the call. Sign was repeated once more, a clarion call that seemed to set the whole room on fire. The coordinates confirmed, and the plan laid bare. The mission was set in motion, a race against time and death that would test every skill, every ounce of courage. These warriors possessed. She saw the tension ripple through the team as they made their final checks, eyes locked in silent communication, each member a vital link in a chain forged through trust and experience. The weight of responsibility pressed, heavily, but it was met with fierce resolve and an unbreakable bond. Her pulse quickened as the leader gave the signal, and the team rose as one, moving with fluidity and purpose. The dorm that had been a sanctuary moments before now emptied fast, its silence replaced by the pounding rhythm of boots on concrete and the faint hum of engines starting. She stood rooted in place, the mop forgotten at her feet, watching the warriors disappear into the pre-dawn shadows ready to face a nightmare. Few could imagine. The air seemed charged with possibility and peril, a crossroads where history would be written in blood and steel. The silence that followed was deep and haunting, a void filled with the echoes of what was and what might be. The dorm felt emptier, somehow stripped of its usual life and laughter, replaced by the heavy weight of expectation and sacrifice. She breathed deeply, steadying herself as the reality settled in. The cleaning was done, the preparation complete, but the real work was just beginning. A war hidden from the world waiting to unfold, and she was part of it, whether she liked it or not. The storm had been unleashed, and the warriors were its eye moving swiftly toward the unknown. The dorm now a silent witness to courage, and fear, sacrifice, and survival, a place forever marked by the return of a ghost and the promise of a fight that would change everything. She stood by the window, the cool glass pressing against her palm, as the first faint light of dawn filtered through the bars of the window, casting long shadows across the empty dorm. The quiet was almost unbearable after the rush. The roar of preparation had faded into a heavy silence, thick with meaning. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, the lingering sweat a reminder of the chaos now past, but the real storm was still to come. The floor beneath her feet seemed to hum with the echoes of footsteps and whispered commands that had just vanished into the waking world. Outside, the distant rumble of engines stirred the air, a low growl of power poised to surge forward and consume everything in its path. She could almost taste the tension. The weight of moments stretched thin, as if time itself held its breath. She took a slow, deep breath, steadying her racing heart, and tried to make sense of the whirlwind inside her mind. The seals had vanished into the pre-dawn shadows, leaving behind a dormitory stripped of life yet bursting with the residue of their presence. The gear left behind, rifles, helmets, backpacks. Each item told a story of readiness and resolve, but also vulnerability, a fragile armor against the chaos waiting. Just beyond the walls, her eyes scanned the room, absorbing every detail, the smudges on the floor, the faint scent of gun oil mingling with the stale air, the faint hum of the radio left on a channel now silent, but alive with memory. The dorm was more than a building. It was a vault of secrets and stories, a place where heroes were made and sometimes lost. She wiped a spot of dust from the window pane, her fingers tracing the cold surface as if seeking answers in its reflection. The weight of what was to come pressed down on her chest, a heavy, oppressive presence that made each breath a labor. She wondered what the warriors faced now as they moved through darkness and danger unknown to the world. The silence was broken only by the faint beep of the radio, a reminder that the line between safety and chaos was thin and fragile. Each second stretched like a thread ready to snap at the slightest tug. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining the battlefield where strategy met. Violence and survival was earned in heart-pounding moments. Her thoughts drifted to the man behind the call sign, the phantom whose return had shattered the calm. The stories she had heard, the legends told in fragments and whispers, painted a portrait of a warrior shaped by fire and loss, a ghost who walked between worlds, a harbinger of both hope and destruction. She felt a strange kinship with the shadows that lingered in the corners, the unseen presence that waited patiently to be called upon. The cleaning rag in her hand seemed suddenly insignificant, a token of a past life before the storm had broken. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of the puzzle, the mission that had brought these warriors together, the dangers that lurked beyond the horizon. The unknown stretched out before them, vast and unforgiving, a crucible that would test every skill, every ounce of courage. The sun climbed higher, casting pale light across the empty dorm, but inside the shadows remained. Thick, the weight of anticipation hanging heavy like a cloak. She felt the pulse of history beneath her feet, the footsteps of those who had come before and those who would never return. The radio crackled softly with static, a ghostly whisper in. The quiet. The call sign was silent now, but its echo lingered in the charged air, a reminder that the battle was far from over. The dorm was a sanctuary and a tomb, a place where silence spoke louder than words. She lowered her head, taking a steadying breath, drawing strength from the calm before the storm. The warriors were out there now, moving through darkness and danger, their fate unknown, but their spirit unbroken. The cleaning was finished, but the real fight had just begun. As the light grew, brighter, and the world outside awakened. She stood alone amid the stillness, feeling the weight of the moment, knowing that soon the silence would be shattered and the storm would roar to life. The dorm waited patiently, a silent guardian of secrets, and sacrifice, a witness to the courage that would carve legends into the fabric of time. The warriors had vanished into the pre-dawn shadows, their figures swallowed by the creeping light as the dorm grew still once more. The silence that settled was heavy and thick like a shroud, wrapping itself around the empty bunks and scattered gear. The place that moments ago had buzzed with life was now a quiet mausoleum holding its breath in the aftermath of departure. She stood alone in the center of the room, the mop forgotten at her feet, and the rag clutched loosely in one hand. Oh, weight of everything pressed down on her chest, the mix of pride, fear, and uncertainty swirling like a storm within her. As the first rays of sunlight spilled through the windows, they illuminated the dust motes dancing lazily in the air. A fragile beauty masking the chaos that awaited outside. Her mind replayed every detail, the faces she had seen, the tension in their eyes, the silent communication shared in nods and clipped words. The warriors were not invincible, but they carried with them an unbreakable bond forged in fire and blood. It was a bond she had witnessed but never fully understood until now. The call sign that had stopped them cold echoed in her thoughts, a ghostly refrain reminding her that legends never truly die. They lived on in memory, in the stories whispered in quiet moments and in the hearts of those left behind. The man who bore that name had become more than a soldier. He was a symbol, a beacon in the darkness, guiding the lost and the brave alike. She moved, slowly through the dorm, touching the worn surfaces, the cracked walls, the faded photographs taped to lockers, each one a fragment of history and sacrifice. The place held more than memories, it held the soul of a brotherhood tested by war and bound by loyalty. The cleaning was done, but the work of honoring that legacy had only just begun. Outside, the world was waking, the sun climbing higher, casting sharp angles of light and shadow across the landscape. But inside, she felt the calm was temporary, a fragile pause before the storm would roar back to life. The warriors were out there now, facing a nightmare. Few could comprehend a trial that would carve their names into legend or erase them forever. Her thoughts drifted to the unknown dangers that awaited the team, the enemy hidden in the shadows, the treacherous terrain, the ever-present threat of death lurking in every heartbeat. The mission was a crucible, and only the strongest would emerge unbroken. She took a deep, steadying breath, drawing strength from the quiet, from the memory of the men and women who had come before and those who had stood beside her today. The mop was no longer just a tool for cleaning. It was a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, small acts of care and order could hold the line against chaos. The dorm was a silent witness to courage and sacrifice, a sanctuary that would wait patiently for the warriors to return or not. The empty bunks seemed to hold their breath. Walls whispered stories of valor and loss, the air thick with the promise of more to come. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the pulse of history beneath her feet, the footsteps of heroes past and present, echoing in a timeless rhythm. The world beyond the walls was brutal, unforgiving. But inside this place, the spirit of brotherhood burned bright, a flame that no darkness could extinguish. As the morning sun rose higher and the shadows retreated, she opened her eyes, knowing that the day ahead would change everything forever. The warriors had answered the call, the phantom had returned, and the battle had begun. She stood tall in the quiet dorm, a lone figure caught between worlds, the cleaner the observer, and somehow now a part of the story that would be told for generations to come. The fight was far from over, but in that moment she understood that courage was not just for those who carried weapons, but for all who stood in the face of the storm and refused to back down.